know that you have some input to this committee. An interesting fact that I did not know, and because I don't do this for a living, one of the first pieces of information we asked to gather was, what is the village composed of now? So, Bell County Records provided a spreadsheet that this committee was able to look at and analyze, and there's 1,697 property entries in that spreadsheet. So there's roughly 1,700 properties inside the village limits that are in the spreadsheet. Now, of those 1,700 properties, there's lot size data on half of them. The other half just don't have any data. You know, where it says lot size is blank. So we've got lot size information on 860 properties that are inside the village. So looking at those 860 properties, 21%, I'm using round numbers here, I'm truncating the decimals. 21% are over an acre. That's 185 properties. 252 properties are between a half and 1 acre. And that's 29%. 213 properties are between a quarter and a half acre. That is 24%, almost 25%. And there's 210 properties that are less than a quarter of an acre. That surprised all of us. As a committee, we came into this thing thinking that inside the village of Salado, everything is at least a half acre. That's what makes Salado, Salado. Because we had that preconceived notion, and then we got the data, that made us take a step back and say, well, wait a minute, is what makes Salado maybe isn't just everything being a half acre or bigger. And this committee's concern is what makes Salado is a community that is not homogeneous. It's a community of diversified incomes, diversified trades, diversified professions, diversified families. And the concern I have, and I'm just speaking for myself, is if we as a committee make a recommendation that sets a certain threshold, then we're going to change what Salado is now. And the flip side of that coin is, of course, if we make a threshold that's a lot different, or we don't make a recommendation, then we could risk changing Salado in the other direction as well. So, with all that said, between introductions and late start and my monologue, we've burned 15 minutes out of an allocated hour. So, without wasting any more time, I'd like to just open the floor up, and if you have any questions, opinions, please feel free to stand up, tell us who you are. We're going to try to capture your comments, so if I ask you to repeat something, it's just because I didn't get it in. So, with all that being said, somebody volunteer.
With those, I'm Maurice Krause. With those lots that are less than half acre, and I assume they're not accessible to the sewage, is that correct? Some of them are not accessible.
That's correct.
Yes.
What can the owner do with it? I mean, he can't build a house on it. He can't ever get a permit to build a house yet.
They're currently on
Most
there.
of those have dwellings on them.
They're already there. Dwellings, they're on the
Standards changed on septic systems years back, and a lot of them don't part of that.
Well, what I was thinking is, it seems to me like the minimum lot size ought to be tied to the house that's going to be built on it, or whatever, somehow, a square footage associated with the lot size. I mean, if you're going to build a minimal house, I'm
percentage.
saying tie the two things together.
Yeah, so you're saying like a percentage maximum of concrete coverage on the land?
Something like that, yeah.
So if you had a 25,000 square feet of land, a maximum size house would fit on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
or a percentage or something.
Right.
I'm Savannah Lassiter, by the way. I know Melanie, and she's a brilliant realtor, by the way. But have y'all consulted with any like drainage specialists? I know because Belton is set up different than us. If we're bringing in that many more homes, it's going to have a significant amount of concrete coverage over the ground. And Salado does have a minor problem with the drain off into the creek already. Have y'all consulted with anybody or professionals on how best to tackle that before all the homes go up so that the current buildings along the creek don't get flooded?
I can tell you, that's not within the scope of our committee. Our committee is, well.
Just
let
if
me
we're
understand you
downsizing the
best.
lots and then
Minimum
more ground
lot
gets
size.
covered, it seems like that would be a factor just to think about.
It is.
In the development process, the developer is obligated to manage their flows and their drainage regardless of the lot size. So if it's a dense situation, they will have to allocate adequate space in their subdivision to manage their drainage flows, because they're not supposed to increase the flow increase the flow as a result of the construction. They've got to manage those flows. So it's taken care of in that development process as far as the requirements, as far as drainage, be it contention, be it tying into an existing system, be it straight run of the creek.
And this is probably just ignorance on my part, but if we take everything down and there's, lot size or, under a quarter acre lot size, have they presented any plans with how they may deal with that? Or will they have to present plans at that time if the acreage is approved for those smaller lot sizes?
At the time of the development, at the time they subdivide the property, they're obligated to submit a drainage plan as part of that construction.
And that goes for a review of the city's engineer.
Absolutely.
There's a permit process for the development. It has to be approved by the city's engineer review process and recommended and then approved by the board on that plat before it actually comes to fruition.
The numbers have to be reviewed and they have to work in order for it to work. But that's a very good question.
James Kelly, and I live on Salado Oaks with you. And we bought the place, the large lot, we love it. I'm just gonna throw a little egg in here, but I don't know what happened to the original presentation of the domain to where it is now, or the sanctuary. But now we have 3 lots buttoned up to our one property. I guess the only solution I would have is maybe a consideration to the adjacent lots. If you have a quarter acre lot, then you won't mind a quarter acre lot being next to you. But if it's a half acre lot, maybe you need to consider that it needs to be half acre across the fence. That's why we moved to Salado, so we wouldn't have to look into 3 backyards as we sit on the back porch. And let me just throw in one more thing as a transportation engineer. I'd be very concerned about dumping all of those multiple lots on the Royal. That is gonna ruin the city. You're gonna be piping all the way down to what's now the Barrow, Chupacabra, and it's a big gathering place. Dump all that traffic down there, and it's not gonna be, it really needs to be, that needs to be considered.
Can I respond partly to that? Can I respond partly to that? And Don, it's kind of a question back to you too. When a development plat comes in, I'm not completely familiar with the village's process, but when, at what point do you require or request that a developer provide a traffic impact study on his development?
When it reaches a sizable number of lots, we require that. In this case, the sanctuary actually did a TIA, a transportation impact analysis, as part of that. And we share your concerns, just so you know, from a village standpoint. There's 2 phases, this isn't a hearing on the sanctuary, but there are 2 phases in that residential development. And phase 1 dumps everything on the Royal. phase 2 creates an opening on the 2268, which more than likely will shed a pretty good amount of traffic out of the subdivision going out there. Because people aren't gonna wanna go downtown and drive through. Some will, but some won't. But I think in that initial phase, I think there is a concern. But we do have the ability, and in this particular development, we did require them and ask them to do the TIA. And it showed a significant chunk of traffic. I wasn't here during that, but I've seen it.
Is that not well? And the study has to come through the city process, with the planning commission, through the board of aldermen, to be ultimately approved. But I share your concern too about how much traffic is dropping, so on Royal, it's pretty congested on weekends already. So hopefully it should be in that process, that each time that happens in an area where that's questionable, is a very valid question in the development review process by the citizens as well as the leadership of the community to ask those questions and prove to the developer, have the developer prove that what his traffic study is going to do to that particular area, given that development plan. And that would come out in that process, which gives people in the community a chance to ask those questions and hope the leadership will develop.
And there needs to be a second part of that requirement, and that is typically the TIA, and you know this, Steve, but one of the things the TIA, the impact analysis is supposed to be used for, is to set forth requirements for maybe improvements that are necessary to handle that increased traffic load.
Yes.
Be it widening the roads, be it additional exits, entrances, those type of things. So as we grow, this committee has the ability to make some side comments in addition to their base recommendation, if they so choose to do so. And maybe as a side comment, your point to circle it is require the study, but also look at the impact fee, or look at the impact requirement on that developer and hold to it.
What's the size boundary you said for the
I don't have it off the top of my head.
But there is a threshold where that becomes required. It's not necessary for all.
I don't know.
Thank you. And ma'am, I didn't get your name, I'm sorry.
Oh, Savannah Lester?
Savannah Lester, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I had you down as second person.
Starts with an S, I probably answer to it. So.
Another thing I was just gonna add to that was, typically, I would say in all cases, but unless there's some other trade-offs with the city on other things regarding development, typically, those off-site improvements created by the traffic flow of the new development are usually, almost always, I would almost say, will fall back to the cost of the developer to put in, the city to do. I'm not gonna say that's universal, but that's typically the case, but that would be addressed and massaged during that review process.
Is it possible to get where we make the road wide? Looks to me like it'd be a pretty tight fit.
Oh, I think you'd be very challenged to try to widen Royal Street from the church down into town. And quite frankly, you'd be very challenged to widen Royal Street on the backside of Blackberry. There's room over there, but the county's regulations at this stage of the game, they only are allowed to grab a certain amount of right-of-way, and the amount of right-of-way they have the ability to grab is not probably gonna be adequate to handle the future growth and development out
So
there.
Royal's gonna stay the size it is.
In town, more than likely, yes, sir.
Unfortunately, T-bone's right there at the main, so the T-bone's at the main street, so that's always gonna be an issue, doesn't matter how big road it is.
It's gonna be a real big issue.
Another issue, I'm Charlene Carson. We live off of Royal Road. We live in the neighborhood Royal Oaks. I can always tell when the low water bridge is closed because that increases the traffic tremendously on Royal. And if you add 2 more subdivisions, we won't be able to get out of our driveway. So I think one thing we can do is we just take that low water bridge and raise it, that would get people out of Mill Creek. Because it's Mill Creek people that are coming down Royal when the that was gonna be my comment. I'm Mary Ann Fiorenza, and I live on Salado Creek Place, so they come from Mill Creek through there whenever the low water crossing is overflowed. And that's gonna be a lot of traffic trying to get out on Royal Street, just normally it will be with all the additional traffic. So I'd be in favor of a different route, another route if you can do it.
Thank goodness for us, we don't have to go back and fix what's already been done, we're just trying to help put some plans together.
I know,
for
but it
the
needs to
future.
go into the minutes or whatever, so people will understand.
What I'm saying is, I'm so grateful we don't have to go back and fix
I know.
all of that.
I think one of the issues that we face, whether it's lot sizes or transportation, is that we have so many subdivisions that are done. They come in and they get approved as subdivision Mill Creek number 22. And it is 49 lots on one road with one access out. 5 years down the line, Mill Creek subdivision number 23 comes on as an all-new subdivision, and it stays under the 50 lot, because with for safety issues, if you build over 50 lots in the subdivision, you have to have two exits off of that subdivision onto other larger roads. So the next subdivision that comes on just ties into a subdivision that is maxing out the traffic for an existing road. And that's not ever taken into real consideration. I don't know if it's a weakness in the subdivision ordinance that says if you tie into an existing road, all of those lots now bring the traffic into consideration. That if you add subdivision A and subdivision B, now you're at 100 lots, you better have two exits. And what really concerns me most about what's happening on Sanctuary is there doesn't appear to be more than one exit off of main exit out of the 200 lots that are being proposed right now. Or am I not seeing the map correctly? Okay, how is that being approved when our ordinances on the books say you can't have more?
Yes, that subdivision is all part of the development agreement, a separate development agreement that includes a number of variances.
Does the number of variants include allowing only one exit when there's over 50 lots? Then we're reaping what we sow. By allowing that, because the whole point of having more than one exit on a subdivision, and this happened long before Don Ferguson was our city manager, but the purpose of having more than one exit on a subdivision is so that if there is an emergency vehicles can get to your house before it burns down. If they can't get to your house because the one exit is blocked up with people parking on the side of the road and they can't get to you, your house is going to flood, your house is going to burn down, and these other things. So for health and safety issues, one of the biggest concerns I have about small lots is that you can end up at 50 lots on a rather small congested piece of property, which even increases the traffic issues higher because you have smaller linear feet with more vehicles. And really, your guys, what you do is really moot because they've already approved one subdivision that's going to have 178 small lots on it that's going to annex. They already have a master development agreement with another one that has lot sizes of 0.08 acres and a lot of them. So when those come in and you come in and say for the future you have to be at half an acre for us to approve you, you've already set a standard. And your subdivision, your zoning ordinance under single family patio allows a minimum of 1,000 square foot home to be built on a piece of property that can be cut down to 4,500 square feet. So you already have in the current zoning ordinance lot sizes of 1/10 of an acre that are allowed.
Tim, just as a sidebar, the subdivisions they've approved size sanctuary in the last 12 to 24 months have all had 2 entrances and exits. And that is a standard. That is something you strive for. And we fought with the developers on that issue, but the reality of it is we've had developers come in here with plans to develop subdivisions, and when we told them you're gonna have to have 2 and we're not gonna accept anything less than 2, they walked out and some haven't come back, but that's the breaks. Our feeling is it's a safety standard and it has to exist.
Right. So the proposed one on Royal that has not yet annexed has more than 1 exit?
It has 2.
Well, that's good.
I will say one thing that, just in my opinion, that I have been hearing a lot of, and I do real estate marketing, and I'm a realtor as well, and I keep up with a lot of the social media stuff because, like it or not, that's the world that we're in. People talk on social media all the time, and it's super easy to do, but you can also get yourself into trouble. But I do hear a lot of comments, people concerned about the traffic, and people concerned about the heavy influx of people coming into Salado and it not being what it was. A lot of people in here sound kind of like they're concerned about the traffic and other problems as well. So just throwing my opinion out there, I think some of the concerns may be eased if there could be some give and take, and maybe the lots could be a little bit bigger and it not be like Belton or Centera and Gerald where they're just, all under a quarter acre. But if there could be some area just to ease some of the tensions and say, hey, well, maybe we'll do the smaller lots on the outside, or is there options that y'all could say, hey, we'll agree with you? And I get it from the development side. I get it that it's business and they have to make a profit in order to come in and do anything. But if all the residents get mad and leave, then it's a catch-22 because the city, let's be honest, y'all want the profit from, or the city would like the profit from the taxes, and that's what makes everything flow nicely and work. But there has to be that level of harmony, and I just feel like there's a lot of people concerned about those lot sizes and kind of getting nitpicky about it.
What you mentioned has been part of our conversation. We've talked about the potential of looking at developments and allowing for percentage in a certain size development to be smaller, larger, or whatever. We haven't had anything fixed on, but the idea being to provide some flexibility so that there is an option for maybe folks who don't have the resources to come into Salado. It's tough if you have to buy half an acre in Salado and build a house. It's expensive, and so a lot of folks who are really good people may not be able to come here. We want younger families to come. That's going to be the lifeblood of the future for our community. And so thinking all that through, how can we break that down? And so that has been a part of our consideration, at least initially. We haven't drafted anything yet. That's been a part of what we talked about.
Okay, awesome. And then just I'm sure that it's not part of y'all's committee's job, but has anybody looked at like any correlations in bringing in that many new people? Is there any correlations in crime statistics? I think somebody said that Saledo's getting a couple more police officers, which I think is great. But just bringing in those large amounts of people that are kind of right next to each other in those smaller areas, if there's any crime statistics on those, or if somebody could look into that and see if the amount of police officers that Saledo's bringing on, if they feel adequately can handle that. And again, I'm sure that that's not y'all's job or anything to look at. I just didn't know if y'all knew if anybody is going to.
I think that's the city manager.
I think that's more of public services, public utilities, that, and ambulance service, police, fire, that sort of thing. That has not been a direct conversation this committee's had. It's been more about
I just didn't know if y'all knew if it was on anybody else's radar to kind of look at.
It's a valid concern, but that's not been a part of our mandate. Yeah, for sure.
I just want to double back on my comments on the transportation and the traffic. Your traffic analysis on the study starts with density, and y'all are here to set these lot sizes, which really density. So that's kind of why I brought transportation into it.
Well, and Tim is absolutely right. We've talked about the ordinances. did not realize that, and I'm in the community daily, driving the streets. And so, we truly need to hear, and I know a lot of these are concerns, and I've written them all down, so we will pass these along to the P and Z and to the Board of Aldermen. But we need to hear what you guys want. That's what we're here for. So please let us know about lot sizes. That's what we need to hear tonight.
For your edification, up there on the map, we tossed up everything in red is anywhere from 2/10 of an acre to a half an acre. Everything in blue or gray is larger than a half an acre. The white is the golf course, what we call public-private facilities. You got our parks in there and those type of things. But it shows you the volume of properties that are actually less than a half an acre.
So Mill Creek is less than half acre lots.
A large part of Mill Creek is.
How did they get that? Was that before?
It was before that, yes, sir.
So when you have those condominiums on Chisholm Ridge, when you have the little patio homes along the golf course, I mean, we are a community of pockets of small lots. So when I hear people say we don't want small lots, well, that means you don't want what we have, because that's what we've got. So if you don't want that,
I think the comment is pockets. of small
Pockets.
lots.
Yeah,
You don't have a
absolutely.
200 lot
No, sir.
subdivision anywhere within the.
That is accurate.
So that's the comment. It's not pockets. Yes, there's pockets of them all over the place, and they make our village unique. But a 200 lot
Is-
subdivision is not.
So would-
Concentration concerns you.
So
Yeah.
would pockets be acceptable? Or?
Well, it's a loaded question because we've had a lot of discussion in committee, and I'm sorry, let me get your name before you stop.
Garrett Quarles. Garrett Quarles.
Okay, thank you. We've had a lot of discussion about, as a committee, would part of our recommendations be if a developer comes in and says, I have 40 acres to develop, and of that 40 acres, 26 of it is lottable. It can be carved out into lots. So as a committee, do we make a recommendation saying, okay, if your buildable area is of this certain threshold size, then 20% must be at least this big. 20% must be at least this big, and then, you can fill in the rest. Should we set thresholds like that so that developers won't come in and just do everything the same? And so that you wind up with subdivisions that are small communities that aren't just completely cookie cutter. So that is a lot of discussion we've had.
That provides the pockets that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, it will provide some diversity within that little community, and that's what you're looking for. That's what Salado was. It's different all around. That's why we never knew there was pockets of smaller lots, because it just all blends in.
Yes, ma'am.
I own a property on Center Circle that was part of the original lots that were given by Sterling Robertson for the town, for the college. And the property that I own, the lot that I own, is an acre. But there are 4 smaller lots that were the original lots. Will that come into play?
You've already been platted, so that would come into, I'm speaking for the
I mean, there's
city.
plenty, because that whole area over there was the original lots.
Yeah, the issue is those develop, or if they choose to develop, or there's an attempt to maybe develop them, the issue is, can they get septic?
Can they get
And
septic?
can they get septic?
Oh, yeah.
And so the position of the health district who permits our septic in this village and in the county is this, and that is, if that was part of a platted subdivision prior to a certain date, in other words, if it's one of the old original plats, they will accept a septic permit application for less than a half an acre if an engineer is able to certify that a system can be installed on that smaller lot and still function properly. We're going through that right now. We're by the golf course right now in that Bluff Circle area. So the answer to the question is, you're not undevelopable. You just have to go through some extra steps to make it happen.
Okay. Well, there's a bunch of quarter-acre lots over there. And there's 2 septics on my property.
Like
lady.
Already?
There really need thought
Not so.
of being progressive in the basis of focal on renewables or sustainability for community. We look at Georgetown, which has obviously been a small town that's become successful, and they're powered basically by renewable energy solely. So as Salato's growing, which it's going to experience growth, especially where it's located on I-35. I know our focal point is on this being about tiny lots, but with these new developments that are gonna come into play, has there been any thought or consideration of having mandates or some sort of emphasis on the renewable spectrum?
Yeah,
Not on this committee.
Yeah, it's way beyond our scope.
Yeah.
It's a great question. It's
It
way
is.
beyond our
It's
scope.
a great suggestion to put on the table as they get through the process.
That was Chelsea, by the way.
Oh,
We'll write it in the notes and make sure it's in the minutes.
is it, sorry, was it Kirby, ma'am?
Chelsea. Irby.
Kirby. I got two bad ears. The third one that barely works.
Yeah, mine.
One of the things that I'd like to just throw into the equation is the moving target on the village of Salato's boundaries vis-a-vis the ETJ around the village. And as municipal utility districts, or MUDs, or they're typically called, are created to develop land outside of the principal jurisdiction of the village of Salato. I was gonna ask Don to maybe articulate a little bit about that, because I'm not so sure that the standard within the city limits of village of Salato should be the same as outside the current limits of the village of Salato. And then how do we deal with the ETJ when annexation continues to happen, which is likely is going to happen in some of these areas around the school and out further west for sure. Don, would you spend a little time talking about that, if you would, just to kind of clarify the issue between ETJ and inside the village?
The challenge you face in the lot size regulation process is typically lot sizes are regulated through zoning. And the zoning for a piece of property is basically the identification of the desired land use for that property by the city through the comprehensive plan or master plan. In the ETJ, we have subdivision control, but we don't have zoning control. So right now, in the ETJ, the governing factor is the septic lot size requirement of the county at a half an acre. We have the ability in those subdivisions that are going to be served by central wastewater that we can set a certain type of lot size for those and build that into our subdivision ordinance to take effect in that area, but we have no zoning control in that area. I want to clarify something also real quick, because I think there's maybe a little bit of a misnomer. There are a lot of subdivisions that are out there pending right now in this community that are outside in our ETJ. All of those are not going to qualify or be capable to be served by wastewater. And I think that's the thing to understand. There's maybe a little bit of a misnomer that all of this is going to get served and all of this is going to be tied into the sewer system. That's not totally the case. So that's another kind of, bearing the clause that we got to think about as we try to wrestle our way out. As far as how do we deal with that aspect of it. But just know that in the ETJ we have subdivision authority but no zoning authority. The county also has subdivision authority. Counties don't have zoning authority. They'll typically set a minimum lot size through the subdivision ordinance, and that hopefully through this work of this committee and P&Z and the board subsequently, hopefully that will produce some type of requirement in the ETJ that sets out minimum lot sizes. Also understand this, there is nothing that ties the minimum lot size to be uniform. You could set up minimum lot sizes based on the size of the subdivision. If it's a 200-acre subdivision, you can say a percentage has to be this size, a percentage has to be this size, as you pointed out, so they're not all the same, and you don't have these track-home subdivisions. That's what we don't want. We want affordable housing in many cases, there's no question, we need that. But the reality of it is, it's the magic of finding that mix of how much of each, and in what situations we want to allow those.
If the county or the city, neither, have zoning authority, what would keep somebody from buying some land next to the city and putting a horse rendering plant there?
Absolutely nothing. That is why we tell people who say, and they're on the fringe, we don't want to be in the city. That is why we tell them they need to understand the most powerful thing that we have from a city standpoint that we can offer residents and offer property owners in this city. It's not police coverage. It's not sewer. It's not water. It's not streets. It's zoning. Because zoning is a form of land protection. And people need to understand that is a huge thing that comes. You're exactly right. I can take you to Bulverde, Texas, where some people fought trying to be annexed into Bulverde. And lo and behold, they were successful in getting pulled out of the boundaries. Bulverde incorporated, and within 6 months of the incorporation, something like that, a gentleman came in and built a ready-mix cement plant right in there next door to them. That would have stopped if they had been in the village from a zoning standpoint. You raise a real good point. So even if you don't get wastewater, being part of the city provides you some significant protection.
Don, doesn't the value of the land protect us too? Everybody's complaining all the land around here, the assessments have gone up incredibly. So just the value of the land around Salado protects us from a lot of things that might come there.
In some cases, you're right, Linda. In some cases, it does. But I will tell you, in this day and age, if you've got the money, it doesn't sometimes block some people.
How can that be fixed? I mean, how can something happen to give someone the authority to
Annex? Well,
no, I'm not annex, but to give some kind of zoning procedures.
the state doesn't allow it. I will tell you that there are some strong lobbies out there that have taken a pretty strong stand about limiting counties' authorities. Those authorities that exist for unincorporated areas. I will tell you there have been some counties for years that have been asking the legislature to give them zoning authority because of just what we're talking about here tonight. But it doesn't exist. That will does not exist right now in the legislature for that to happen. And will that happen anytime soon? That's a good question because right now the legislature is in a real weird state of mind. And I know you think they're probably in a weird state of mind all the time, but they're in an even weirder state of mind as far as how they're dealing with city governments and how they're dealing with county governments right now and the authorities of those entities. So, right now though, it's going to take a legislative move for that to happen.
Another tool is deed restrictions. If you got 100 acres of land, you want to bust it up into smaller sections and sell it off, you can restrict how it's utilized. And that's a way to control as well. The area where I live, I can't raise swine. Nobody around can raise swine. But that's a part of the restrictions, and so therefore that's one more legal tool that you can institute on that land. And you can't control something that's not belonging to you, but if you develop it yourself and put those restrictions into place, that's another tool.
Have we answered your question on minimum lot sizes?
I haven't heard one single minimum lot size
I'm
yet.
still asking. Yes, Ms. Courtney.
Okay, I'm Courtney Bagley. I've lived in Salado, I've worked in Salado at the high school since 2012. We moved here in 2013 officially, and we own two properties, one that is less than a half acre and one that is more than a half acre, and they are both in Mill Creek. And I wrote this out. Right now, I don't support the lot sizes smaller than a half acre. I do feel like it's a slippery slope. I want development in Salado to be thoughtful and consistent and not driven by outside forces and special interests. The issue of variances came up earlier. That really bothers me when we set protocols and then we allow variances to change those. And when I vote, and I'm an active voter and participant in Salado, I take that into deep consideration. You know, people who support and don't support the variances. I'm really concerned about the environmental and aesthetic impact of the smaller lot sizes. We see these bumper stickers when we're driving up and down I-35 that say, don't California my Texas. My bumper sticker says, don't Gerald my Salado, okay? I hate driving down there, I hate looking at it, and I don't wanna be that. It's a huge concern to me. I'm very interested in what green spaces do, not for, you know, when we had this last election, we talked about kids being able to play and stuff. That's not really the purpose of a green space. The purpose of a green space is to provide a barrier, a berm, a natural break from the development to whatever else is going on. I think those kinds of things are really important. I think they are important for you know, the animals that we share our community with. I think having those environmental and aesthetic factors put into place are extremely important. And I haven't really been convinced to change my mind, even based on this map. You said that there were 1697 residences, but we can only account for 860 of them. And so I'm still wondering why. Is it because of when they were built? Is it because of where they're located? I don't understand why we don't have the rest of this information. But as of now, I'm saying I don't like it. I think the mixed idea might be, you know, something that could be make both sides happy. I'm disappointed because I have a lot of friends who feel the same way I do, who aren't here to express their opinions. But that's just, you know, that's my 2 cents. So I'm telling you straight up, that's how I feel about it.
That's what we came for.
That's why we're here. Absolutely, thank you.
And so, you know, the county has, the CAD has the lot size information. They just don't display it in the spreadsheet they provide. You have to drill down to get that data. The map that we put together actually went in and measured each one of those lot sizes. So it includes data that we had as well as data that did not show up on the CAD sheet. So the map is very accurate.
No, it's not done. I can see a number of lots up there. We've got one house on multiple lots.
It is accurate by lot size.
By lot sizes, but you need
and that's
to,
what we're talking about is lot size, not houses, John.
okay. Well, I hate to do all the talking, but in one of my past lives, I was had a lot of rent houses, and some would say I was a slumlord, probably. But I quickly found out that the smaller the lot, the smaller the house, the slummier the subdivision was. I mean, that's just a fact. It's because I don't know why it is, but that's the way it is. I would suggest that we do something like, say, for single-family dwellings. I mean, we're known as an affluent community, and I think that's probably true. I guess the statistics would show that. I would like to keep it that way, and I would like to not have slums in the area. And so, in accordance with that and my experience, I would say that the recommendation, whatever you come up with, should somehow tie single-family dwellings to say a quarter lot, a quarter acre. Sounds about right to me. If it's a multiple family dwelling, it should be no more than 4 apartments or something in one building. I don't know what it is. And that should have at least whatever is reasonable for that. But there must be statistics out there that shows that lot size and dwelling size have an influence on the beauty of the community, let's say. I guess all I'm saying is let's don't do anything that let any part of Salado become slum.
Second.
Thank you.
I guess that's what I was trying to get at with a bit in a more politically correct way with the crime statistics. But that was much more eloquent than that.
Okay, all right. My name's Christy Justice. I live in right across from the pro shop, and a group of 10 townhomes that were built in the early 70s by the Sherrills, the man that developed the golf course. He lived there. Our units are about 2,000 square feet, which they don't look like it from the outside. But I looked at mine today, and it's 0.07 an acre, and mine's the biggest one. So Salado has always been mixed use, always been. I have surrounding me, my parents lived at 1508 Mill Creek on 2 acres on the golf course. There's like 8 houses that were developed on that corner, real close together. Across the street are the wooden townhomes, the 2-story ones. And just driving on the way over here, and you know, the way that things are changing, folks. The half-acre lots are not really that beautiful right now. Nobody's taking care of them. People can't afford to water them. You have to pay to have somebody care for it. You're talking about the environment. I mean, our country is moving away from that. That doesn't mean that's what Salado has to do. If somebody wants an acre, 2 acres, whatever, 20 acres, 40. I mean, that's what our country does. But to think that people moved to Salado thinking they were gonna get all these big lots, it's just not reality. We can look at it right there. Golf course is surrounded by mixed use all the way around if you go on the golf court paths. And I did some research today too, and 30% of all homeowners now are one person. In Austin, 2/3 are only 2 people. There's only, the other 1/3 is families, because families they can't afford it, or, they're not building 5,000 square foot houses. It's just not, some people do, and that's fine. That's what our country is. And having smaller houses doesn't mean necessarily more traffic or more crime, because if you have one person living there, then you don't have more traffic, and you certainly don't have more crime, because there's probably not teenagers. So the houses that have 2 or 3 teenagers, which mine did, I raised 3 kids, and that one of them has 5 kids. So those houses are going to be more traffic and more crime. So it's just, it's reality. It's the world that we live in. Things are changing. It's not, mine was built in the early 70s, and it was one of the first ones here, if not the first. I don't know that for sure.
Do you know, just out of curiosity, out of the Austin, the higher percentage of the single person homeowners, how many percentage of those is condos or townhomes that the owner actually purchases from the developer who built the townhomes?
No, I don't. It's just
I
nationwide.
think a lot of people my age and stuff, we tend to go for the townhomes.
So
but
30% is nationwide. 30% of all people that buy are single. And let's face it,
I'm one of them.
Yeah, I'm one of them too. And I looked up, I thought, that doesn't sound right. And we have 10 townhomes in there, and people that have lived there, I've been there 13 years, and some people have been there 40 years. 5 of them are single people, men or women, single. There's 2 families, and then 2 are investment properties that are empty. So it's it's reality. It is what it is. And, we're backed up to the golf course, but then I have other townhomes across the street, and then I have 2 acres backing up to me. So it's we've got mixed use, and it is what it is. The traffic, I'm concerned about that too. And not to get off subject, but we need to be concerned about with the businesses too, that are coming here bringing thousands of people on the weekends, and we can't get down the street, and how that's affecting. But
you mentioned a little while ago about the lot sizes being a contributor to smaller lending itself to maybe less care. I live on 12 acres, and on my road, I'm probably one of the smaller tracks, and some of us take great care to make sure our place stays mowed, cleaned up, neat. Some don't. And they put a lot of money into building homes and developing property that they don't care for. And so the size doesn't reflect how someone's gonna care for the place. It's just an observation from where I live.
Maybe size is not the criteria, cost of the property. I mean, if a person can move in someplace and have a two-bedroom house for less than $100,000, it's gonna be a slum before long, based on.
2 or 300,000 in that subdivision.
Yeah, my thought is this, I don't think anybody here wants a Gerald here. Nobody. I don't think lot size has anything to do with it though. I think that the planning, the requirements of green spaces, the requirements by us of the egress and ingress, and other factors, and the quality of the builders is going to make the big difference. You know, I've seen beautiful subdivisions on, you know, probably less than 1/4 of an acre lots, like a 0 lot line patio home development with beautiful homes, and they're probably several $100,000. But it depends on the quality, not the size of the lot.
As well as the quality of the construction.
Correct.
Goes in that direction too.
Absolutely.
Let me ask this question as a follow-up. I've heard I don't want to be Gerald several times tonight. I don't want to be Gerald either. But what I will tell you is this, and that is, I think an issue that we need to see y'all's thoughts are as this committee works through the process, and you touched on it earlier about the fact that we don't want tract homes. We don't want all the same size lots. So is it the thought process of y'all here tonight that you want to see a mix? Are you comfortable with the mix? A breakdown in the concentration? Do you want to see them all large lot subdivisions or all small lot subdivisions? Or are you interested in seeing a mix?
Mix.
I think as a compromise, a mix would be acceptable.
Which is what we have now.
Obviously, we push for the larger lots, more of them. I mean, the land that they're developing would dictate a lot of that, because it's a lot of this land they're talking about developing is beautiful. They should break it up into larger tracts and get more for it, drive the value up. But I think a mix would be a good compromise.
But in fact, in my original comment, the mix is kind of what I had in mind, but just to make it where I don't automatically have something that I didn't sign up for, to make a little buffer where it kind of matches what was there. If I had a 1/4 acre lot, then I wouldn't really care what the 1/4 acre lot was next to it or not. But that's not the way this is going.
I understand exactly what you're saying about that. If you back up to something that's a green belt, but it's really just undeveloped land. And I had the same situation in Round Rock for over 20 years, where I lived next to it and enjoyed it for 20 years. But it ultimately got developed into commercial property. They put nice medical office buildings behind it years and years later. But I don't have a solution to that. I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but if you carry your half acre, say the next one has to be a half acre, and if that was developed, the next one has to be a half acre, you just perpetually extend that.
But what I'm seeing here would just be for the length of our street, and then across the street from that, it could be 1/4 acre.
Oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
you're not saying that
The adjacent property.
I see that. And you understand what I was kind of saying about
Yes.
how that goes. I've had lots of conversations with people who said, we don't want those back there, we have to give them a piece of land. But the only thing said in a very polite way is, well, buy it.
Right, and I consider the fact that this is coming for.
But I understand, but at some great point, you can accomplish it. And I want to go back to what the lady back there said about the higher density living. There is unquestionably a national trend now, as there was a national trend estate, land has gotten more expensive and construction costs have gotten incredibly expensive in the last few years. I mean, you cannot believe how expensive new materials and labor has gotten, even in Texas. I mean, it has. And as such, there's a lot of pressure on how far that can continue to go. And as the aging of America, the demographics are there with baby boomers. There's lots of people in Mill Creek. There's lots of people in other communities too today that wish they didn't have that half-acre lot or that 1-acre lot. They'd love to have beautiful 2,200 square foot house, maybe 2,400, but they don't need that 3,500 anymore. What they want in that house is they want really nice upgrades. They don't want a Gerald style house that's just nuts and bolts. And I think when you look at the demographics of Salado as a whole, which is evolving, but it's principally a elderly community. I mean, it is. And certainly moving younger as the time goes on. There's a lot of people that I think in this town, and realtors maybe never shared this with Melanie, but there's a lot of people that are 60s or 70s or 80s that don't have kids at home anymore. They don't need that 3,500 feet or 4,000 feet. And the problem is you can't put a small house on a half-acre lot anymore and get appraisals that really work for purchasing it by and large. I mean, build a 2,000 square foot house and it's all you want. You pay a fortune for that half-acre lot, then you all of a sudden are looking at a $200 per square foot house. And it's hard to get appraisals for that. So there's some economic issues in the development process, certainly, to deal with that. I personally think that the lot size, I'm going to have to agree with Mr. Cox over here, that I don't think the lot size, particularly the closer you are to the core of this community, the more expensive the real estate is. The more expensive the real estate is, the far less probable you're going to have anything come like a Gerald, because developers want to make money and they know that they're not going to put a piece of junk on an expensive piece of land. It just doesn't work successfully. And so she's talking about high density. This committee is talking solely about single family lots. We aren't a community designed to do anything but to make a recommendation on a single family lot. We're not talking about townhome, not talking about a condo. Jay's mission for us, and we spent a lot of time, what is exactly our mission? Our mission is to recommend to P&Z and Mr. Cole and the rest of the aldermen up here what we think those lot sizes should be. And I personally think there'd probably be some difference between what we say in the ETJ, this would be the septic sewer mud situation versus what they are in the city. And I'm talking a lot about it because I spent a lifetime in it, but so far. But in single family, the one thing I look at, Mr. Carson, is that right? I really appreciate your comments. I look at a subdivision, and I'm gonna go back to this pocket part Mr. Portal said. The uniqueness of Salado is really its shining star. I mean, it's not awesome. It's got a lot of different things. Vic Means lives in a beautiful house on Main Street right here. And I don't think it's 0.2 acres. I think it's even less than that. The Home Place subdivision right off of Van Bibber is an absolutely beautiful little subdivision. It's a pocket subdivision. And you gotta get your mindset, what are we talking about here? We're talking about big subdivisions, maybe we put a limitation on our lot size committee that is something on the basis, if it's less than 30 lots, it's a different situation. Or 100 lots, it's a different situation. I don't know where we're gonna go with that. I really don't, because we haven't talked really in detail about know nobody said that, but the Home Place Communities, little cul-de-sac right there is a beautiful example of Salato's uniqueness. I'm not talking about everything being like that, but there are exceptions, and that's why I go back to what Mr. Cox said, is it's not always the lot size that dictates junk or quality. Lot price, like Linda Reynolds said, land price is a big factor in the consideration of what's going to go on that lot. Now they have a municipal utility district there. They can make the lots as small as they want. The higher density, the higher profit, everything works beautifully. And let Gerald be Gerald. There's no one here. I wouldn't even serve on this committee if I really felt that we were heading in that direction. I'd step down, and I think the rest of them feel the same way. So it's a difficult issue, and it's completely unfair, in my opinion, to just sit there and say no tiny lots and stop the discussion there. Yes, traffic is important. Yes, quality is important. Yes, inside the city, we want to maintain that uniqueness and character it has. You only do that by not having a uniform box that everybody has to fit in and make it monolithic, I guess is the best word, all one thing. And that's what we don't want. And that's not what Salado is. Well, that's not what I want. I see Salado as a beautiful mosaic of a lot of things going on, and it's not all the same. So I like that. Having said that, I do get the transportation issue. That goes up here, and it's an absolutely important issue. But I'm going to get off my soapbox and just say I hope that's helpful. I hope that you may agree or disagree with it, but I think in close proximity to downtown, land prices are very high, construction costs are high, and the fact of the matter is growth will slow down significantly if we stay with half-acre lots and above, given the prices that people have to pay today to buy a home.
Well, let me, and I'm sorry to sort of cut things short, but we're 15 minutes past the allotted time that this committee set up for this. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I think we can continue this discussion, but I want to continue it in an informal manner and allow people to come and go as their schedules dictate. The important thing I want to express before we stop the formal part of this evening is I hope that you have all taken away the considerations, the concerns that we as a committee have, and you understand as you start to peel the layers off this onion just how complicated it gets. We came into this thinking, some of us on the committee thinking this was a 1 or 2 meeting job. We would throw a number on a piece of paper, turn it in, and go home. And the more we started to examine the situation, the more complex it got. And before we lost ourselves in the details, we had to draw our focus in, deal with a single-family resident situation. That's it. Not commercial, not mixed use, not retail, not anything else. Just single-family residence. And I want you all to know that I've been very proud to be part of the committee, and that everyone here is doing the best that they can to try to not only make the best decisions as they see them, but trying to also make the best decisions allowing for the broad views held by everybody in this community. So with that being said, I'm going to stop the meeting. Please continue to visit, and I have pressing family engagements at 8 o'clock. So I'm going to have to leave, but I'll let everybody else stay and talk. With that, I'm going to adjourn and leave.